Welcome to Tales from the Trenches, Season 4. Today, it is my honor to have fellow Canadian Mike Dirksen with us.
Here's a story of a fundraiser who was launching his very own web show. Each episode is very short due to edits, so it can really flow. Here's a story of a podcast guest star who was busy raising money of their own. They were each great in their own way, fundraising in his own. Till the one day when Jack asked a guest to join him, and they knew it was much more than a jest, that these guests must somehow form a resource. That's the way they all became the podcast guests. The podcast guests. The podcast guests. That's the way they became the podcast guests.
Mike is the founder of BuildGood, a fundraising growth agency that helps nonprofits in Canada and the U.S. increase revenue from new and existing donors, with a special focus on improving the lifetime values from first-time giver to legacy leaver. He's also the host of the top-rated nonprofit podcast, the BuildGood Fundraising Podcast, and convener of the BuildGood Summit in Toronto, a 2-day showcase of fundraising innovation and inspiration that brings together 300-plus fundraising leaders. But his most important job is husband and dad to 3 kids. Outside of work, he loves spending time at the cabin with his family and reading biographies.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jack. Good to be here.
So, years ago, people are saying, look at the internet and everything. Direct mail is going to be dead, right? It's got a shelf life and it's going to go away. And far from it. I think direct mail is still as successful as a revenue stream as any of the other ones that they have. But, it's kind of, sometimes direct mail goes through the email. Sometimes it goes on the snail mail. Like there's different ways of doing it. So where do you see kind of the direct mail headed? What's the next kind of iteration for direct mail?
Yeah, so direct mail, just from a numbers perspective, just before we get into a point of view, just from a numbers perspective, direct mail is a workhorse and continues to be. And the moment it's not, people like me are going to stop doing it. We're not doing it because we're in love with the idea of mail. Mail is actually a lot more technical than digital fundraising. It's a lot more complicated. It takes a lot more time. It takes a lot more precision. There's a lot more personalization that often happens on the mail side. So from a numbers perspective, it is a very effective channel and tool and continues to perform well. There are a lot of pressures on it with the cost of paper, with the cost of printing, and with the cost of Canada Post and USPS rates. That has changed dramatically over the last 10 years. And so costs have increased. But in terms of are fewer people responding to direct mail, it's still a very, very strong performing channel. And relationships with donors that are started over mail or continue over mail also tend to be fairly sticky. It has a lot more friction than some other channels. And so people who overcome that friction that can sometimes be a proxy for them being a donor that's a little bit more committed, although I'm not saying there's a blanket statement. I'm saying that can be sometimes a little bit of a proxy. Now, where's the next iteration of direct mail going? We only use mail and email and digital together. We rarely split those out. Channel is the weakest form of segmentation. There's no such thing as a mail donor or a digital donor or they're all just humans who happen to sometimes get the mail and make a gift online or see an ad and send in a check, or we're all so messy. If we actually looked at our own patterns of what we're exposed to and how we act, it's all kind of a mess, right? And so the carefully curated donor journey, I think, is a myth. We do the best to show up consistently with lots of value in the world, and people are going to choose how to engage with us in different channels. Now, where's direct mail headed? I think the days of sending 14 pieces per year, like some organizations do, some do 20, believe it or not. I think those are largely a relic of the past. That still exists, but that format came from agencies who made their money on a markup on direct mail. So the more envelopes they print, the more money they make. And there's still some very large agencies that is still the model. And some of them own the print shop. And so they're very incentivized to mail a lot because that's how they make a lot of their money.
Right.
We think about direct mail as being very thoughtful. Some people get a lot of pieces. Some people don't get a lot of pieces. Some people really only like to give once a year. And so we honor that request, and we do some other things throughout the year that are more impact and stewardship focused. You can do direct mail in a very, very thoughtful way. You can send project proposals like you would for major donors, but you can in front of a major donor, you could sit one-on-one in a coffee shop and mark up a project proposal and work collaboratively with them. That doesn't make sense for somebody who's giving you $500 a year. It makes total sense for somebody who's giving you $5,000 or $50,000. But we do project proposals. We do large packs sometimes for the right people. We do very, very small, simple packs. If you're a little bit thoughtful about listening to what people like, it's not hard to use mail in a very thoughtful way that honors how people want to participate with your organization, and that creates a lot of connection.
Wow. Yeah. So, I think that the direct mail certainly has an amazing mining the data that comes from that. I'm a numbers guy. I have a degree in stats. So that fascinates me, right? And the direct mail folks are the folks that are much more likely to leave a bequest than the guy who gives, or woman, whatever it is, who gives you $1 million one time as a major gift. They don't. But someone who's giving you consistently, whether they're monthly donors or they give their $500 a year in a couple installments, but they're doing it over 10, 15, 20, 30 years or more, they've kind of created that pattern, and they're saying, you're important to me, just as I'm important to you. But it's one of those things. That's what they think of. Oh, I'm going to give to this one, and this one. Those are my 3 big charities that I'm going. Right. But as fundraisers, we don't know that there's only 3 and that you're in the top 3.
Right.
So I think that there's amazing potential there that we just aren't capitalizing on.
I do.
And I think that sometimes getting in front of someone and talking about it, they don't want that. Right? They like the direct mail. They like the fact that, I'm giving through a channel. I don't have to look at someone over a coffee. This is how I like to do it. I'm going to give on my time. I'll do it online at 2 a.m. when I'm in my boxers and t-shirt.
Yeah.
And, in my home computer, and it's great. And leave me be.
Yeah. Yeah. We get about 36 emails for every piece of mail. That might change. That's the latest stat that I saw. And so even just from the perspective of having the chance to earn somebody's time and attention, there's still value to being in the inbox, as long as you're doing it in a way that provides value, as long as you're not trying to be extractive in your tactics and manipulative and transactional, right? As long as you're trying to be very thoughtful and trying to provide a lot of value, it is still, for a lot of people, a great experience to open up an envelope, see a picture, read a story, and feel a sense of autonomy, competence, relatedness, connection.
Totally. I'll never forget, I worked for a hospital, 20 some odd years ago, and I was going to visit a donor, and I saw they had a stack. They kept every single direct mail letter that had been sent, I don't know, since Moses came down from the mountain. But they highlighted things, they wrote notes in the margins, and I'm like, holy jumping. there's proof that people read it and they read it analytically. They're very invested in it. So to just say, it's a scrap piece of paper and you read it and you get it thrown away. Where the problem becomes is a direct mail response as a percentage is never high, right? You send out 100,000 pieces and you're looking at, if you get 4,000 gifts back, you're doing pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Well, no one, if they came home and said to their parents, I got 4% on my test, would they say, oh, good, that's great, right? So like it's not efficient in that manner. But, again, you never know. I was at a different donor. They had a stack and they may have received their direct mail letter in May, but they kind of have a cycle as to when they give. Oh, so they keep it going. Okay, now it's your turn. I gave to people that I got beforehand and they're thoughtful about it. So, you always can tell which mail package they're replying to. And sometimes it's ones from a year or even 2 years ago. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Yeah. On the basis of like every mailer, like you talked about 4%. Not great numbers. On its own, you would look at that and be like, why are you wasting money? Why are you doing this? It's helpful to know when something at a 4% response rate versus a 6% response rate. Oh, this thing actually seems to resonate more with people. But also on a whole, direct mail, you can look at it a little bit like advertising, which is you're never going to know which of your advertising is really working. It's just like people are seeing you, hearing about you, reading about you, forming opinions about you, which relates to forming trust about you. Are you who you say you are, right? And so you can look at that and be like, hey, it's 4, 8, whatever. Pieces of very personal advertising they're holding in their hand, addressed to them, and they might not respond to you in that minute or to that piece. But are you building trust? And so overall, you just have to look at, are we getting a lift overall in our program when we're running these kinds of things? And you can tell if you turned off, for most of our clients, if we turned off direct mail tomorrow, the first 3 to 6 months would look awesome, because expenses would be way down.
Right.
And then after 6 months, 6 to 12 to 18 months, we would be getting calls left, right, and center saying, what is happening? Income is just dropping right off a cliff. So it is a bit of a flywheel that you have to keep going, which does a lot of work in the background, which you can't always tie back to every single piece.
Well, Mike, this has been absolutely amazingly interesting. You certainly have the direct mail market, very, very well thought out. And I think that many of our listeners will really, really appreciate connecting. So if folks wanted to connect with you, how would they do that?
If they're podcast listeners, because they're listening to your podcast, they can find the BuildGood Fundraising Podcast, which is very focused on building a broad base of donors. We don't really get into major gifts. They can find me on LinkedIn. I try to be pretty active, so just look for Mike Dirksen, or they can go to buildgood.com, and there's all the information there.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Jack. I'm glad we were able to find time for this.